Welcome to our webinar. My name is Phil Thompson. This is brought to you by streamingchurch.tv and streamdudes.com. We're glad that you're here. Thanks for being with us. The webinar is called What Drives Your Stream? Master Your Church's Streaming Setup. So we're excited about this. We're excited to be working with the Stream Dudes on this deal. And we have a very special offer at the end of this webinar. So you got to stay tuned to be eligible for it. We'll let you know how you could possibly win this at the end of the webinar. We're planning on probably doing about a half hour or so, and we would assume that we might go a little bit longer, and we'll also have some Q&A afterwards. So make sure if you have questions, you can even put them in the chat right now. As you probably will have some, and then we'll answer those questions. So thanks again for being with us, and let's just go on and begin our little process here. Again, we're glad that you're with us here. So let me just introduce our host. I'm going to do this real quick. The team that we have here with us, and I'll let the Stream Dudes take care of that. But first of all, I want to say hello to Steve Lacey. He's our CEO, and he's our founder. We've been going since 2001. And we're glad Steve is with us today. Michael Gray is with us. He does tech support and lots of other things for streamingchurch.tv. And then, of course, you got me, who does customer care and another multiple things like our blog and our Church Solutions podcast and also tech support. And we've got the Stream Dudes with us, John and Chris. How are you guys doing today?
Well, good, except that I look like I belong on the terror watch list on that photo that we used there. I mean, I turned that gray since COVID.
Really,
Jeez.
right?
Wow.
You guys look a little younger there in that picture, but you still look good even today. We're glad you're with us. You guys are the co-founders and CEO of StreamDudes.com, and you guys specialize in equipment.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's what we're going to talk about today. All right, so let's get going here. Can we do that? Before we actually get into some equipment, I want Steve Lacey to talk a little bit about this. This is our prologue. Before we talk equipment, let's talk about some other things here, like audience, strategy, content, and team. We won't take a lot of time here, but this is very important. Steve?
Some of you may remember the five tenets we have: audience, strategy, content, team, and equipment. So I'm going to talk very briefly about this because you're going to end up in a different place unless you address these first. So I'm going to use some examples of three types of churches to walk through this. So the first church I'm streaming to, I just want to stream to my committed people that are a part of my church. They belong to my church. And I'm going to choose a different strategy for that. And I'm going to put together different content. I have very little competition because these guys already love me and show me, they're committed to my church. And so my strategy may be we're just going to put something together. We're going to go low budget. We're going to get something, available for them. They're not going to be looking around. The next church is the ones that want to grow their congregation. And so they want to reach those in their neighborhood. They want to get people exposed to the church, and then they want to draw them in. So that's another audience. My strategy then is my competition is going to be all the other local churches in the area. So I've got to deliver a certain amount of excellence with that. I've got to put content that's going to be relative to my neighborhood and my local church. And I'm going to put a team together that's going to be able to manage that as well. The third group would be those that want to start an online ministry. They want to reach the world. That's their growth. And so their competition is all the other streaming churches in the world. I'm going to put a strategy together that's going to put together a very high degree of excellence from beginning to end, because my competition is everybody else. And my content is going to be, on top of my game. My team's going to be top of my game. So your strategy is going to depend on all of these. And then your equipment, how you fill that void with equipment, our Stream Dudes are going to address.
All right, good deal. And when we say competition, we're just talking about, I just want to clarify this. It's not like, we got to win this thing. It's more of we want people to understand, what they're getting and what the difference is, those kind of things. Right, Steve?
Yeah. I mean, people are going to be, if I'm looking for a local church, I'm going to look at my local churches.
Yeah,
And so they're going to be visiting a bunch of different churches. So I just want to, make sure you stand out and present the right message if you're going for that audience.
exactly. All right. So, what drives your stream is the name of our webinar. And let's talk a little bit about equipment, and let's talk with the experts, Chris and John. Take it away, gentlemen.
Fantastic. So I'm Chris Lang here with Stream Dudes. Before we jump into kind of what is your equipment, one of the great things that John and I talked about, as houses of worship would come to us and ask us, hey, how do you stream, right? Because that was a big thing back in COVID. I used to tell people there were three things. Number one, you need an event or something to stream. Everybody on the other end of this broadcast has that. They have a church service. It's the most important thing to them in the world, most likely. Number two, you need some kind of equipment. And I always leave that discussion till after number three, which is a place you can stream to. And that's really where a company like yours comes in and really helps people to be able to get their message out to the world as they want it. But this is really about equipment. So let's talk about that. What is your equipment? Well, it's switchers and controllers and converters and things, right? So I guess for this discussion, really, it's anywhere your signal passes through to get from your camera out to your viewer. And so, that's audio, that's video, and then connected devices to those. So again, cameras, cables, converters, switchers, graphics, encoders, monitors, recorders, really any one of those things is considered equipment that helps you stream. And here's something we really didn't talk much about. That also includes the network in your church if you use something like IP video. So go ahead and advance the slide.
All right. Well, we do that. Let's go next to.
All right, so I'm John. I'm the co-founder as well and chief operations officer here, but I also dabble a little bit with the technological side, have a production background too. So a few things is how to stay in tune with the equipment that you have. It's one thing that you have all these devices. Well, you need to know where they go. So that's the first thing is you need to document everything. Why? As a Croatian gentleman once said, if you were to get hit by bus, who will take over for you? And he made a good point. This was actually one of our clients out of Northwestern University. Zoltan was his name, and he was a good dude. And he said right up front, he goes, I document everything. Everything gets taken. So if I get hit by bus, it is covered. And he is right. That's the first thing. Know where it goes. The second thing you want to do is you want to touch every piece of equipment per week. Why? Because you'll know if there's a loose wire, something minor. And if you can address it while it's minor, it doesn't become something major, which brings us up to having replacement cables as needed and making sure that you replace every cable when you're doing an update. Why? Cables are cheap, but they're also a pain if they go wrong. So yeah.
Another good thing of that too is if you do go and replace your cables, number one, they're good.
Right.
But number two, you'll always have a spare should somebody run over a cable or something.
Yeah, and that's another side of it too, is that, once you determine that all the cables are good, we got to make sure that your system is good. So a lot of people are using computers for streaming now. We've got vMix, we've got OBS, we've got TriCaster S, which is the new software that they're coming out with that you could do yourself. So what does this mean? It means that your equipment has to be in tip-top shape. Virus scans when you are not streaming live. I can't stress this enough. Turn off your live virus scans when streaming live. Update your system firmware. I'm looking at you, graphics card drivers and Windows updates. The biggest detriment to any whole thing that takes place, because if that's not properly updated, then what may happen? You may see your GPU and CPU usage go off the charts. And sometimes you get a false positive. You think it's bad hardware. It's just a firmware driver.
Or a driver.
Something minor that it could be. But if you didn't take the time to start from the beginning and document where everything goes, then we'll go through all the equipment each week to make sure everything is exactly where it is. Once you get to all that, you've done your updates, you've done your firmware updates, then finally you have to write it, because if it isn't documented, it never happened. So having a gripe sheet or a maintenance log is key to all of this, because once you have that all labeled down, let's say somebody departs the church, and I don't mean in a casket. I mean that they leave, they go move to a new community. Chris, how many times have we had to deal with that call? inherited this equipment and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ultimately keeping that gripe and that maintenance on will help people, because if you see a pixel out on your monitor and you think it's your camera, if it's documented,
correct,
they already know. Oddly enough, I do see some Facebook groups of some church groups that every Monday morning they will put out, okay, what went well yesterday and what didn't. And so that's kind of a gripe sheet, but that's maybe putting it out to the ethers versus keeping it family
sheet too. And that's the thing that's cool, because there's other people that could benefit from that they could see this and go, wow, we're not the outliers here. We're the only ones. So Chris, once we get everything in tune, when and how do you buy your equipment? When do you make that decision?
Well, that's one of those things. Through our years of doing this, we've found that houses of worship, they tend to buy gear at certain times. And so why, let's give some of the reasons that they do it. Like one of them is maybe they're changing a venue or getting a new control room. And as part of that, they have to buy new gear to install that. If they're ever doing renovations or improvements in either in the sanctuary or in the front, they may want to go ahead and change their gear at that time.
I've noticed that you took a picture of my office here. Where did you get
that? Yeah.
Thought you'd appreciate that.
It's interesting. We've actually walked into a church that had a beautiful production desk, but underneath looked exactly like that photo. And obviously no names here, but helping them to get rid of the was really fantastic. It was great to help them get rid of that.
Yeah.
But other reasons people at houses of worship might be buying new gear is maybe they got some extra money.
Yes.
Over their budget or unexpectedly from a donor. But most of the time, what we find is it happens when something breaks. And so a camera goes down, a switcher goes down, the stream has no audio or some kind of an echo. And so when you get to a point where something breaks, you need to replace it. And that really creates one of the things that breaks my heart, and that's panic buying.
Oh, that's
right. I need it because I need to get my service out this week. And a lot of times that panic buying actually does lead to purchasing wrong equipment or over purchasing, or even worse, under purchasing. And so, one of the things that we want to do is, I think we've become really excellent at it, is listening to a customer talk to us about what they have going on, and then making appropriate recommendations. And that we may not be able to do that over the phone always, but certainly to have some choices when you're buying that won't lead you down a bad path. It's one of the trickiest things, and it's not just houses of worship.
Right.
This is all businesses do this.
Like the customer in Canada that we're dealing with right this minute, like literally leading up to this conference call, we basically were tapped on the shoulder for a very large banking, it was a contractor of a banking client, and they bought a bunch of gear that it looks like they're going to have to replace the whole workflow. And they're doing it in such a very, very fast way that we're trying to keep up with them. I felt bad dropping off the call, but I'm like, hey, we got this interview we got to do.
And so that talks a little bit about when and why houses of worship do secure new gear. I mean, again, it's new pastor, it's something breaks, it's a change in venue, or ultimately what I would love to see more houses of worship do would be to have goals, right? Every year, every 2 years, you come up with your goals, and that you buy as a result of those goals.
Well, and that leads right us into the steps of evaluating and updating equipment, Chris, is let's say, for instance, your goals change. Does the current gear fit what you're doing? And if not, what do you do with that old gear? And I'm going to open this up to Phil and Steve, because you guys have been around the block a few times. I mean, guys, talk to us here. Like, what do a lot of your clients do with old gear?
First of all, you got a picture again from my office, I see. But this is my computer that Steve doesn't like. But, honestly, I'll let maybe Steve and Mike address this. But when you have older gear, I mean, some of it, you can't refurbish it because it's out of date. So
I am so glad you said that.
The obvious thing is you give it to the youth group, right? I mean,
no, you're right.
You let those guys take the used stuff and see what they can do with it.
I mean, I used to, in fact, Michael Gray, who's in the background here, we were streaming with a TriCaster years ago. What was it, 2008 or something? And
Yeah.
we got hit by lightning, and so we went to try to get it part fixed on it, and they said, "Sorry, it's out of date. You need a
Right.
new TriCaster." And it's a challenge sometimes. That I'm not trying to get down on TriCasters, but
No, we're not beating them up.
but
At the
yeah.
time, it was pretty proprietary as well, and
Yeah.
that was honestly for us where we were at the time. The guys just spoke to this. That was a bad decision. It wasn't the right device for where we were at the time.
I'm so glad you say that. So that is another thing that we lead ourselves into in this whole evaluation is let's look about, you know, how your current workflow works for you. And if it doesn't, are there any gaps that need filling? And how do we fill those gaps? I mean, do you use the latest and greatest, or do you go with tried and true? And, you know, once you understand what these gaps are, you look at the pros and cons of your current workflow right now, and you say, okay, you know what? I really like the ease of use. Or, you know, in the case of the TriCaster, especially back in 2000, it was probably like an XC300 or whatever it was. I can't remember the first HD models. And then, you know, you had the TriCaster Studio, which I think anyone that ever owned a TriCaster had a TriCaster Studio at some point in their life, because man, Kiki, she knew how to sell a gear, man. Her and Rex, man, they knew how to sell gear.
They're good.
They were really good at it. But the thing is that it didn't fit everyone's needs. And people were looking at it going, oh man, I really miss having a good old tactile switcher that I didn't need a PC to rely on. And that's not a detriment to that. It also was a changing times. So now we get to the pros and cons and we see what works, what doesn't. So once we go into that, we look into finally your needs, your wants, and now future needs. Because it's so hard for us to whip out the magic 8-ball and say, oh, great magic 8-ball, what new streaming protocol is going to be out next week? And let's seriously, well, guys, let's talk about this. All of us here, think about this. We had SMPTE. We had NDI. We had SRT. We had, what's the one? Dante AV. Now, we've got all these different protocols. And before that, we had, you know, the RoboCams that from talk about proprietary. I'm drawing a blank here. The big PTZ cam manufacturer.
There's a lot of them. Yeah.
You know who I was talking about? They had the whole market on it for years, guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking here right now in the chat real quick. Sorry, guys, I'm all over the place, so forgive me for just driving off the road here. But no, so Terry, you said, so what are some examples of documenting, maintenance, and logging? And this ties in with this. So that's why I bring this up, because that's when I saw maintenance, I'm like, oh, so Terry, the way that I usually do it is just a real simple like spreadsheet. I have the date and I would have a quick status in one column and just say current status as of this, and then suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make it as simple as possible. So then that way, you see, okay, everything is fine. Suggestions. Router is getting a little long in the tooth. Maybe we need to replace it. That's how that would go. Then the next week, you'd see the next, you know, status. Had to replace the cable. Suggestions. If we replaced one, we may have to replace multiple, and so on and so forth. And the thing that I like to do with logging personally, or I suggest to people, is a Google Sheet. Why? It's in the cloud. Everyone could access it. Everyone could contribute to it.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's key. And that totally ties in with future needs. If you're not logging anything now, you need to log something in the future, right? You need to make sure that somebody is maintaining things. And let's face it, and I apologize right now for any IT professionals that are in charge of a house of worship's IT. You guys are the gatekeepers. You have, and I'll be sympathetic instead of throwing you guys under the bus like a lot of people do. The truth is that you guys have the hardest job. Is you're keeping everyone between the markers, so to speak, right? You're keeping everything flowing. So yeah, sometimes you got to be a little heavy-handed and tell people, no, you can't do that. But there's usually a good reason for that. And those reasons, you may see that people keep slamming into a wall. They keep getting viruses. They keep going places that they shouldn't go on their computers. And you may say, you know what? PC workflow is not good for us.
No.
This is slowing us down. It's not speeding us up. So, I mean, you know, Chris, let's talk about that on your end now as we start getting into the next point, which is, you know, budget buying and feature buying.
Yeah. So, we've started to notice over a few years that there's really kind of two driving forces. Once somebody understands, okay, we're going to buy something, we need something. Do you buy for the features that you want, or do you buy based on your budget? And this is always a tough thing, right? Nobody likes to talk about the money, so that's why we talk about it as openly as we can with customers. We've always had kind of a philosophy here at Stream Dudes, and that's to spend our customers' money like it was our parents' money.
Right. Be
good stewards for our customers. But ultimately, this will rest on the philosophy of the congregation, and we're hoping that philosophy is a team atmosphere where you get together and talk about what those goals are, what you need, and then agree, hey, here's our message that we're going to send out to the world. And then how do we get the message out? And that's really the most important thing. One of the things I don't think enough of our customers do is to really engage viewer feedback.
Yeah.
Hey, 10 people that are watching, 50, 100, 1,000, whatever, whoever's watching, tell us what more you want to see from us. Add it as a slide to the end of your broadcast. If you don't ask and involve your viewers, you'll never know what they need. And so garnering that viewer feedback is like us asking our customers, hey, have we lived up to our end of the agreement?
Right.
Right. It's just that, it's that gut check.
Well, and I'm going to jump into this too, because I'm going to rope Steve into this conversation as well. One of the things I love about their platform, and thank you guys for letting me take a test drive of streaming church.tv, because I love how user-friendly it is, because I feel like you get that instant feedback. So Steve, when you guys were putting everything together, how did you guys, I'm going to turn the question on you now. So how did you guys listen to your users to develop where you're at today? I mean, what features were you hearing from your congregations that you should have?
I mean, part of it was features from their congregation and people asking for certain things. That drove a lot of things. So if there was, a customer said, I want to be able to trim my videos after I recorded them or something like that, that drove things a lot. And then we also looked at what some of the other things that were going on, what's new here? What are some things that, other companies are taking advantage of? Is that something we might? But when it's kind of like, in my world, bug fixes are the number one priority. If customers are asking for something, that's also the number one priority. So those get, all the votes as well.
Interactivity is something that really is important, and you guys just touched on that earlier. I mean, viewer feedback, but also just letting people know, hey, we know you're out there, and it's not just a cut and paste. Here's the video. Hope you like it. It's interacting with people, and for us that serve churches, it's platforms that take prayer requests and give people an opportunity to give online, an opportunity to be able to see other things that the church has, automatic follow-ups so that people get emails when they've come the first, second, third time, and even if they don't come after a while. We even have AI as an AI web host for those that want to use it, again, to help everybody to keep interaction happening, to keep a flow during the service. So it's not just video, although you could have video only if you wanted, but it's the platform that allows people to communicate with each other, even in privacy, private chat.
I'm glad you touch on that, Phil, because we had a client that we had to go over there to replace a camera for them. And I look up, and right behind the pulpit, there was a large green screen. And I said, oh boy, where's this going? And he goes, oh, no, it's pastor's Bible study class. They started streaming them, and when they made it somewhat virtual. So they would put a virtual background that would fill the particular part of scripture, and it would match up with it, and it would have historical backdrops and things like that talking about it. And I said, he's literally bringing the Bible to life. He goes, yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. And he said, and they're picking up younger viewers now because now they're engaging. They're seeing more than just that. So I'm glad that you guys are doing the AI host. That is incredible because that really takes things a whole another level.
Yeah. Well, and talking about budget buying versus feature
Mm-hmm.
buying, I mean, look, we all have a budget. We all drive
Yeah.
specific cars or live in specific houses for probably budgetary
Right.
reasons. When you're looking to get gear for your stream, one of the main reasons I think that you want to focus on feature buying, buy the feature, is exactly the reason that these folks here are in business. Look, free is good, right? And I'll just call it out.
Yeah.
Facebook and YouTube,
Yeah.
they're free, they're great, but you have to play by their rules. And if they don't like Baptists or Catholics or Muslims this week or this month, they'll just cut your stream. We've even had instances where even if a house of worship buys all the licensing rights to all the music they're going to use, as soon as that music goes out over the stream, they get cut and they don't know why.
Yeah.
And again, free is great. Free is wonderful. But if it's free, you are the product. Don't ever forget that. These gentlemen here, they have a great service, one that I think more houses of worship should take advantage of. Stream to a place where you're not going to get taken down. Stream to a place where you have all the additional features to allow you to expand your ministry online. These guys make it easy. I can't stress that enough. And so, not to belabor that,
Right.
You need all these features. You only use your seat warmers in a car in the winter. So
Right.
that's half the time. But to have it makes all the difference in the world. And so when you are buying, yes, we all have to have a budget, but let's focus on those features that we want. And we've agreed as a media ministry that we want to put out to the world.
That makes
Well, I appreciate that, guys. And we do. I mean, they're plugging us right now. And we appreciate that. But we have been serving churches now since 2001. And we do have features that are set up for houses of faith. Many of the ones I just mentioned earlier. Steve, anything else you want to add to that before we move on?
That's, I kind of explained that we only serve the church. So everything is geared for doing church.
Yeah.
So,
and it's your content. When you stream with us, it's your content. And that's what John and Chris were saying earlier. When you stream to other places like YouTube and Facebook, it's no longer your content. All right.
I have a favorite saying there, Phil. You'll probably remember this. Back in the day when I was teaching social media, I would tell businesses, don't build your business, don't build your marketing world on rented property. And that's what social media is. You're renting property, you're at their whim. And we have a lot of customers that have come to us because all of their content was taken down overnight and lost all the recordings and everything.
Yeah, it's hard. All right. Well, let's move on here. By the way, if you have questions, put them in chat. We're going to take some questions here in a moment. Also, we're going to do a giveaway here, an opportunity for you to win something really special here by the stream guys. But let's move on here. So let's see, where are we going next here? I think we've got Chris up here.
Yeah. So tips for smart buying. We just talked about feature buying versus budget buying, but let's talk about how to buy smart. Whether you've got a ton of money or you don't, there's kind of a set of things you can go down to really spend your money well. And the first one is determine your goals, right? If you don't have goals, everything you're doing is haphazard and won't come together in a fluid production for your house of worship. And I can't really overstate that enough. Talk to your pastor. What does he want people to see and view?
I'm glad you said that because this is something I just want to put out. There's anyone that's on a board for a house of worship. I don't care if it's a church, a synagogue, a mosque, it doesn't matter. Please talk to your spiritual leader, listen to them. The whole point, the reason that they are the spiritual leader is because they have a vision in their head. Work with them, please. We had a very sad situation occur with a synagogue out of Chicago where the rabbi had this amazing vision that would incorporate so many little elements of the community. His board totally flatlined him. I mean, to the point of just gross disrespect. So please, guys, I can't stress that enough. And Chris, I didn't mean to jump down your throat. It's just something that, when you guys all work together, it's going to, and I get it. You want to keep a budget in mind too, but at the same time, you have to work together because after all, there's a reason why they're the spiritual leader. You know?
Well, and there's another thing that you and I do very well with houses of worship and any business, and that's, we could take your budget, tell us the maximum amount you're going to spend, and then work backwards.
Yep.
We can help you to get more stuff usually that way, and then along with working backwards within your budget, set your expectations appropriately, right? You may not always get the most expensive Sony PTZ cam, but you aren't necessarily going to end up with a USB webcam either.
Right.
And so working backwards, it at least from my side, from our side, I think it helps to clarify, right? And we can spend the biggest dollars where they're most important and smaller dollars where they're not as important. But again, having conversations with members of your production team, along with your vendors. I just referred to us as a vendor, which is, it's true. But have those conversations, talk to the production team, see maybe somebody's Apple expert. And so maybe that's the direction you go if that's going to be your team lead or the person who's doing a certain task over and over. But if you don't talk to the vendors, if you don't talk to your team, you start buying in a confused way.
Yeah.
Another thing is to plan your workflow. So you guys are all looking at an example of a workflow. And these are really easy diagrams to do, right? It accounts for everywhere your signal is going to go. It accounts for all the pieces of equipment that you have. This is a great way to take and write a list of all of your gear. Put your serial numbers on it. Put the data purchase on it. Have this information readily available.
What we recommend to people is if you're doing an IP workflow, static IP addresses, then get a label maker and label each device with an IP address and the username and password. That way, if you're like, well, what is this? Oh, I can just look up the IP address and access it right then and there. So now, again, somebody gets hit by a bus, they can figure it out.
Yeah. There's and I know we hate to use that old adage, but it really kind of drives that point home for us. Once you've had conversations with your team and your ministry and hopefully your pastor, you have a really great idea as to where you need to go. And so to be smart about buying, you've planned out your workflow. Don't deviate from it.
Yeah.
If you deviate, rework your workflow really quick before you start spending cash. And then, of course, ask an expert. I'm a big fan of the Facebook forums and Reddit. It's easy to get quick information for things that might affect a lot of people. One of the most frustrating things to read as somebody who interacts in these forums is, I have a computer and a camera and my signal is scratchy. Okay. Does that Phil, does that mean anything to you, or do you need a little bit more information in there? Tell me your specs on your computer. What signal are you using? These are the types of things that when you ask an expert, if they can't understand your scenario very quickly, either you're not explaining it or they don't care. And so, whether it's a consultant, whether it's somebody tech savvy in your church, or whether it's Stream Dudes or some other reseller, an expert, ask an expert. It's usually free. If you need a lot of technical expertise, offer to pay for it. Sometimes guys will just say, no, let's just talk. Let's see what you got. And you can get that expert advice for very little or for free.
Yeah.
And I really think that when you have the conversations with your people, when you've gone and done some reading, when you've documented what you want your workflow to be, and then talk to a professional, you are miles ahead of 80% of the houses of worship.
Well, and everyone thinks that, if you do it yourself, you're going to save money. And the truth is that you do to a degree. You may save money up front, but in the long run, you may totally have went down a path that took you right back to the path you may have started had you have just spoke to an expert. And here's the other thing, even another church, if there is a congregation who streamed that you're like, oh my goodness, this is beautiful, this is what I want to be like, just send them an email. More times than not, they're going to respond and tell you, hey, this is the cure we use. This is how we do it. And they may even work with you too.
And most guys are always open to sharing. Most churches will be happy to help you and share in that way. So yeah, absolutely. Communication's so important. Asking lots of questions is so important. So let's say some guys or some people listening here and go, well, you know what? We do really need to make some changes. We need to refresh our equipment. What kind of tech refresh? What can it actually do for our organization? John, Chris?
Yeah, there's a lot that a tech refresh could do. And, understanding that a tech refresh is going to take your old equipment and could possibly either step by step or drastically take you into the digital age. It also provides a better experience for your viewers. And remember, your video becomes your calling card. People see that something is shot a certain way. We have a ministry that we work with out of Elgin, Illinois. They have a bunch of bird dog cameras and NDI workflow. They had no idea the flexibility that they could get using NDI. They were so hesitant. And then when we showed them, they're like, oh my goodness, it became signature for them that their Easter and Christmas services became so epic that everyone knew right away who they were just by seeing a 10-second video.
Well, you gave us the thing of take your ministry into the digital age, right? Which is, it sounds like hyperbole, but the reality of it is starting with your church's network.
Yeah.
Everything gets attached, right? All of your audio is running through your network. Right. You have security cameras at your church. Those are on your network. Every computer is on your network. Maybe your cameras are on your network if you have an IP-based workflow. So digital age is actually the truth.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Let's say you are the one person in your congregation who is responsible for and puts out your stream. Yeah. And you wake up Sunday morning at 6 and you're ill. Well, if you have the technology the right way, you can probably switch your service from your pajamas at home if you have to.
In fact, there's probably one of the people watching. It's one of our clients. Hey, Michael. I know for a fact there are Sunday services where they have had somebody be ill, and he was able to remote into his dude rack and work their PTZ cameras off there to at least get some simple shots and presets that they were able to do. So they were still able to put together a beautiful production. And when you put together a beautiful production with beautiful gear, what does it do? That entices people to watch, that entices people to share. And what this does is, well, let's be honest. We have to look at this from a business side of things too, that you can't have new technology unless you have dollars coming in through donations, people within your congregation who are generous, or you could even get people to start wanting to be a part of it, to help out when you have a mission or something like that. You may have new volunteers and new people to reach and bring in. I mean,
so what does all that do for you though? If you have more money and you have volunteers to want to run video equipment, what does that really do?
Well, what that really does is it just helps you want to go further. And here's the thing, if we're talking about spreading the message and sharing love and sharing all these wonderful things that a house of worship stands for, you're now able to reach a larger audience. You're able to share more. You're able to get further. But here's the thing, you also now become a de facto mentor.
Yeah.
And you're teaching other people how to spread the message and how to share in a very positive way. And it's like, they always say, practice what you preach. It's really what's happening here, right? Is that here we are telling all these people, hey, this is all the stuff you can do, but this tech refresh will actually allow you to do that, because now you're expanding your reach. When you expand your reach, you expand your message. We used to say when we first started Stream Dudes, we'll help you share your message with the world. And it sounded like the biggest line of crap, but it's true. Yeah. In COVID, we actually saw that.
Yeah, we got to help people share their message. And I want to touch back on being a mentor.
Yeah.
Because it may have been true for me, maybe not. Maybe as a kid in church, had I seen cameras and somebody doing cool stuff, I might have wanted to get involved back then.
Exactly.
But this is a career you could be teaching somebody. This is a way to support a family, to support a home, live in your community, and share with your community what else is going on.
Right.
So you might learn about this in your house of worship. You might go and cut your teeth in church, but you can actually take that and really help out your community on the backside.
Well, and I'm not going to sidetrack us too much, but this is something I do want to touch on that you mentioned about helping your community too. So we're in rural Delavan, Wisconsin. That's where we're based out of. Why are we based here as opposed to Chicago, where we started? And it was because of that C-word community. We love the community that was here. my wife and my daughter, I know that she's going to be raised in a place where there is some values, but also whatever happened to that N word, neighbors. We actually have neighbors that want to work with us, that get along with people. We forget about this. And then, we come back to community. And one of the things that Chris was talking about, this mentorship thing and community events, the church, growing up when I was a kid, was the center of our lives.
Yep.
And even though we grew up in the city of Chicago, being from an Italian Catholic family, that was the epicenter for us. That was huge. And, as time went on and as the parish kind of fell apart, unfortunately, or, the community around it fell apart too, and we moved on, now that we're here in Delavan, one of the things that I love is, regardless of your faith, there is a community within a community within a community. And it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Because now you can get everyone together, even from different faiths. It's truly wonderful. So Chris, great job talking about the mentoring thing, because that's huge.
It's one of those big benefits that I think not a lot of people tend to bring up and
absolutely. It's very important. So a tech refresh will make the experience so much better for your viewers. It can welcome new people who are looking for a church. It can encourage new volunteers. It can help you create even better content, and mentoring, as you just mentioned, and it will help you grow. So we're going to give something away here in just a moment or so, or at least an opportunity for you to win something. But I do want to point you guys to the Stream Dudes. StreamDudes.com. Look it up. If you want to reach out to them, you can go to info@StreamDudes.com. That's the right email address, right, guys?
Yep, that'll work.
Yeah, and there's a phone number on there, but these guys are the experts, and they're good guys. We've been working with them now, putting this together for a while, and they're a lot of fun to work with, and they certainly understand equipment. We'd also want to just mention that here at streamingchurch.tv, we have other resources as well. We have a new product called dailydive365.com. Check it out when you get an opportunity. It can take your sermons, and it can literally create content from your sermons, 7 days a week devotionals. It can create clips. It can create podcasts. Lots of cool stuff there. We have a podcast called Church Solutions Podcast. We have a blog.streamingchurch.tv. And of course, as these guys have already mentioned, we are streamingchurch.tv, and we can help your church stream. We have a platform. We have another webinar coming up next month. It's how to market your church, how to help people see your church online, and help people find your church. So that's coming up November 19th. You can look that up later at webinar.streamingchurch.tv. Here's what we're going to give away. It's worth almost $1,000. What is this thing? You mentioned it earlier.
This is the Bird Dog X1 PTZ camera. So Eric, hey, sign up so you guys can try and win this. They'll save you guys some money.
And if you've liked looking at nobody likes looking at us. But if you like the image, if you like the camera shot, if you think it's crisp and clear, I'm pointing at the exact camera that will be given away to one lucky winner.
Yeah. There you go. All right. So people can sign up for an opportunity to win by going to support@streamingchurch.tv. Just send an email, support@streamingchurch.tv, and that will make you eligible. We'll have a drawing. We'll use technology to determine a winner. How are we going to do that, Steve Lacey? How are we going to use our technology to do that?
We're going to use the technology hat.
That's right.
All the names in our technology hat.
That's right.
pull the names.
AI has nothing on a hat.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
That's right. So you can do that. So support@streamingchurch.tv, support@streamingchurch.tv, and send an email right now. We'll have a drawing a little bit later today. It's time for your questions. If you have questions, we think we have answers. Hopefully we'll have some answers. So you can type your questions in the chat. We've got some already. Somebody want to read some of the questions we have? And while we got it, we can, Michael, can you help us out on this? Michael generally fields a lot of questions.
Yeah. So the pretty long one here, so I don't want to miss any details. They want to stream to a partner church in Europe, looking for a PTZ camera, dynamic auto follow function that can grab audio from sound desk, and live stream with minimal editing. We currently use an SLR plus a video capture into a mobile phone. and Camerify Live app. Okay, that's pretty specific, guys.
Yeah. So there's and one of the beautiful things is there's a lot of ways to
Yeah.
get what you want done accomplished. The easiest way is probably going to be to take all of your signal into software such as Vmix,
Yeah, or
for
something
example, and then you SRT out to your
Right.
church, and they will get that signal in near zero latency. It should be really relatively
Yeah.
immediate.
And it all depends on how much buffer they need or something like that too. Now, if he's trying to get it to an app, there are, several different app options out there. I mean, there was one, I think it was called switcher.io. It was fun on Macs. It seemed to work pretty well. We've used it before too. And some of these, Eric, will also support NDI. So if you're using a PTZ camera that can output NDI, that's something that might be worth it to you. Now, in the case of the Bird Dog X1, not because I'm trying to hawk what we're giving away, just straight up honesty. I mean, this camera will have basic AI tracking, and it also has an NDI HX3 output too. So then that way, if you do have an app that could read NDI feeds, you could bring it into that app through NDI and then send it out too. But the camera does also support native SRT, I believe, too.
Yes.
So you can do SRT right from the camera. So yeah, there's some good options, man.
Another way to do it would be to get an encoder for your video signal on your side and a decoder on the other side and send it over the internet that way. So there's a couple of different ways to get there. I would talk to some people online, again, your Facebook groups, your forums, to see what others are doing and what might work, or give us a call or call another reseller, an expert that understands video transmission.
Here's a question for you. A couple of things popped up there. NDI, does my network have to have specific strength to use NDI? And we probably ought to just define what is NDI for maybe some new people.
Yeah, so NDI stands for Network Device Interface. And the easiest way for non-technical people like me to think about that is it's an SDI cable that is the same as your network. And so NDI is a really easy way to get things from here to there without having to be a network expert. But does your network need to have a certain oomph, I'll call it? That answer is yes. And the reason is very easy. And to give a very technical answer, every video signal takes up a certain amount of space on your network. And so if you have one NDI signal on your network barely even notices it. But if you've got 4 cameras coming in with full NDI signals, and then you're sending one up to a projector and one out here, all of a sudden you've got 8 signals on your network that can handle 3 or 4. And so you do need to have an appropriate sized network switch. A 1 gigabit or a 10 gigabit switch is what's recommended most of the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you have to have good internet, or I mean, because the NDI sounds wonderful, but what happens if your network's not very strong?
So let's talk about that. So people often think that, oh, my upload and download bandwidth equates to internal internet speed and traffic, and they're 2 totally different things. That's why I love it when people say, oh, well, I've got 100 gigs down, 100 gigs out, why am I having all these problems? And it's because their internal network, there may be a choke point. It could be a bad router, it could be a PoE switch, or just an Ethernet switch in general that is actually causing the choke point. So there's an app called Wireshark. And I'm actually a big fan of Wireshark because it kind of shows you what's going on in your current network. And you can see all this data coming in and going out. And meanwhile, you're like, well, I still have 100 gigs up and 100 gigs down. I don't understand why I'm having problems. The way I explain it to somebody in a real simple way is this. You have fuel in the gas tank. You're driving to your destination. All of a sudden, you get whacked in the back of the head because your little kid threw a toy at you. Now, you go to lean around and go tell the kid, hey, stop that. Your wife starts yelling at you to keep your eyes on the road. So now, before you know it, you got this internal battle in the car. You're not able to get to your destination, even though your car's full of gas, because you just pulled over to basically get scolded by your family. That is the difference between your network internally versus external network and bandwidth and things like that. I will be blunt. This is something your network or ISPs will not tell you, because they want you to buy fiber internet. They want you to spend the money on a lot of bandwidth. Truth is, you could stream in as little as 5 up and 5 down. We've done it. We've been doing it for years. Prior to HD, we were only streaming on 386 kilobits. I mean, all of us new tech guys remember that.
Mhm.
And there's a bandwidth mode here. You can adjust the bandwidth, and all of a sudden, then it became 1.5. Then it became, or 1.5 megabit. Then it became 5 megabits.
Yeah.
Then it became, so it slowly started getting bigger, bigger, bigger. But the truth is, you have a threshold. Like for HD video, like you really tend not to go above 10 gig or 10 megabits, because you can go with a higher stream, but for most people, they're only streaming at about 5 megs.
Yeah.
You don't really
It's the
need that.
difference between some signals going on within your house or
Yeah.
versus up to the cloud. That's the risk.
Exactly.
Well, that was a good example, John, but it sounds like you need some therapy.
No. My kid's great, actually. I love her. She's 7 months old. She's awesome. My wife,
All right.
on the other hand, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, cover your butt there. So, all right. So, any other questions? We've gone a little bit over time, but I think it's been worth it. Any other questions we need to take here before we go back to just again offering our giveaway here? Anybody else? Once, going twice? All right. So, if you have not sent us an email yet, I'm just going to go quick to my raw slide here. Can you guys see this? Send us an email, support@streamingchurch.tv, to make you eligible for this Bird Dog X1. Great camera. It's almost $1,000 value. It's $999.99. So it's good enough for that. So anyhow, all right. So guys, thank you so much. If you need equipment, folks, check out streamdudes.com. They are the experts. And if you need a content delivery network, a platform, we are part of that as well. Streamingchurch.tv. We're happy to help you. And like the Stream Dudes, we'll be glad to answer any questions with no obligation. So you can talk to us anytime, questions. We're not going to charge you to do any questions. All right. Anything else, guys, before we go away?
No, I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work, and hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Well, we appreciate you guys very much too. And again, if anybody needs any questions, you can always send an email, support@streamingchurch.tv. On behalf of the Stream Dudes and Steve and Michael, I'm Phil Thompson. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you again for another webinar.